Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Your Hired interview training event. We're excited to see that so many of you are with us here tonight. I think over 350 people have RSVP'd, and that's excellent. You know, we know it's a busy time for you right now, and finding the right job at a school you love is really at the top of your things to do list. And the first step is interviewing with and impressing the principal. And interviewing really is a skill. And certainly principals are looking for key traits and characteristics to determine if you're going to be a great fit. And your job is to really convince the principal that you are. The good news is that we have a couple of experts here tonight to help you through this process. Kelsey is from Nashville Teaching Fellows, and Nina Wall is from TNTP Teaching Fellows. Nina is also a Teach NOLA alum. We're going to kick it off with Kelsey sharing some best practices for interviewing with principals, and then Kelsey and Nina are going to do a series of role plays, and of course we're going to save plenty of time for questions at the end. If you do have questions, please click the Q&A button in the upper right-hand corner of the screen and add it in so we see what you want to know. And if you see a question that you're also interested in, click +1. So that's that. Kelsey, take it away.
Hi everyone, like Haley said, my name is Kelsey and I am the Program Associate here in the Nashville Teaching Fellows office. And I've been working here for the last several months, and I do a lot of different things here in the office to support our logistics team. But one of my favorite things that I get to do with our fellows are mock interviews. And so I am very excited to share this information with you today because I think I see a lot of fellows coming in and initially they're feeling very nervous, or maybe they feel underqualified and they're not very sure how to proceed with the interviews at schools, especially if they haven't worked at a school. But the first thing I want to address is that you were selected to be a part of a very competitive program. Teaching Fellows is an exciting opportunity that you've been invited to attend, and the reason we've asked you to be a part of this is because we believe that your experience and your background is going to make you a great candidate in the school and a great teacher over the course of the next year. So you definitely believe that about you, but what's most important is that you believe that about yourself, and you really need to root yourself in that knowledge so that when you go into interviews, you are conveying that confidence to principals, and they will also leave that interview believing the same thing. So throughout today's presentation and during our mock interview portion, I will remind you of that confidence over and over because I do think it's one of the most important things. So to kick us off, I'm going to be talking about 4 kind of big ideas, and before we move into the question and answer with Nina. The first thing that I want to talk about is your mindset. So if you are taking notes right now, you can write down number 1, mindset. The second thing I'm going to talk about is messaging. So how you're messaging yourself to the principals. That's the second thing. The third thing is your presence. And the fourth thing is preparation. So let's hop back to the first one, mindset. And just to kick us off, the most important thing is that you have a kind of a growth mindset about yourself as a new teacher, because you need to know very confidently and clearly that you are a new teacher, but you are going to be learning so much here in your cohort, especially over training and then throughout the year with your support from your coaches. You also want to make sure that your mindset is flexible and adaptable, that you're showing passion and resourcefulness, and that you are excited to take on this responsibility. All of those things are going to demonstrate to the principal that you're ready to take on this challenge. And so you're going to see how that plays into how you'll answer questions a little bit later. But the next piece I want you to keep in mind is your messaging. It should, of course, be positive. An example I will give you here is I was doing a mock interview with someone and I asked them, on a scale of 1 to 10, how organized are you? And their answer was, well, I'm not the most organized person in the world. And I was like, oh, stop right there. You never say anything negative about yourself. You want to be positive. But you can be honest and say something like, you know, I would rate myself a 7 because there are some parts of my life that are disorganized, but I make sure that the parts that are important are organized and I'm ready to go and prepared for what I need to be. So you can be honest and demonstrate you're not perfectly organized, but you can cushion it in more positivity. You also want to be cognizant of how you're framing your experience. I know a lot of people are coming from a variety of backgrounds, and you might be thinking to yourself, but I don't have any teaching experience. Why would they want to interview me? Or if they ask about my experience, I don't have anything to say related to education. And I would disagree with you, because I think that no matter what you've done, your experience and the skills that you've earned through those experiences can help you as a teacher. And an example I'll give you there is I was recently talking to a fellow who has been a banker in the banking industry for the last several years. And she's worked a lot of different positions in that industry, but she was concerned that she had no teaching experience. And so we sat down and kind of looked through her resume to see what some of her strengths were. And something that stood out to us was her communication skills. She could talk to anyone, be it a client that walked into the bank, someone else that works in the bank, her supervisors, the administrators of the bank. She felt very comfortable conveying important, detailed information about sensitive topics like finances to a variety of people. And so that's something that will definitely help her as a teacher when she, in a given hour, may speak to a student, a fellow teacher, the principal, the charter school network leader, and a parent, all in an hour. She is going to be able to transition between those different communication skills very quickly. And so I challenge you to take a few minutes at some point over the next few days and look through your experience to see what you can frame for the principal and the schools that will relate to education. Even if you haven't had an education position, you can make those connections. And principals will also be making those connections. That's likely why they saw your resume and asked you to come in, is they're making those intuitively, but it's going to make you stand out as a candidate and make your case a little stronger as a candidate if you are kind of actively making those connections for them. The third piece I told you I was going to talk about is presence. And you, of course, want your presence to be very professional, and I'm going to use that word I told you I'd use several times, confident. It is a fine line between being confident and being boastful, but that is a line that we want to walk to make sure we're conveying all of the great things about us to the principals. And so kind of along with that professionalism and confidence, you want to also make sure you're conveying a teacher presence. And you might kind of think back to teachers you've known of in the past. When you see them in the classroom, they carry themselves very upright, and they're presenting. They're ready and prepared to kind of look around the room and present to everyone. Their voice also carries. It's a very strong voice, which is also a chapter in Teach Like a Champion. Having a strong voice so you can really command the attention of an entire room. Even in an interview that might be one-on-one with one person, you can demonstrate that presence of a teacher. And again, you're not in front of the classroom, but it's only going to show that principal that you're ready to step in front of the classroom. Another thing along the lines of presence is your body language. So as a side note, I'm also a yoga teacher, so I'm going to do a little yoga exercise with you now. Take a moment, check into your body. See how you're holding yourself. Just naturally, how do you normally sit when you feel like nobody's watching? I'm probably kind of leaning on an armrest or slouching. If I'm left to my own devices, I use my hands a lot. I'm sure you can see that. But you want to be aware of what your natural body language is, and then make sure that you, in an interview, can maybe adjust it so you're coming off professionally and confidently. So, for example, when I go to interviews, I actually have to put my hands together and I squeeze them between my knees so I don't look like a crazy person directing traffic. I still want to be authentic and be myself, so I will use my gesturing at certain moments, but for the most part I want to keep it under control so I'm not looking like this in a one-on-one interview. And the last thing connected to presence is you want to make sure that you're not rambling and going on and on about something. That is a way that you can convey that you're not confident, that you're not sure of what you think or what your experience may be. And so being certain of kind of how you want to proceed in answering questions is the best way to avoid that. A good way to frame a question, if you're not sure on how you want to approach it, you can start with a general statement to answer that question, and then use an example from your own experience, some evidence to support that general statement. And if you keep it kind of in that clean format, principals can follow along, you'll ensure that you're not rambling, and you still get your point across. Another thing that will help you to avoid rambling is my number 4, and that is preparation. So preparation is probably the most important thing. You really can't expect to walk into an interview without having looked over some questions, reviewing your own resume to highlight those strengths that I was talking about a moment ago, and then reviewing all of the materials and information that you have access to. So my first kind of step in preparation is going to be to digest all of the information that you can. That's information from Teach Like a Champion, emails from your local staff. It's going to be your training this summer. And to give you an example there, I recently was speaking to a principal who had asked some of our fellows to come in to do sample lessons, and he was a very open and understanding principal, so he knew our fellows had never done a sample lesson. To help them, he sent them an email, gave them an outline of how the sample lesson should go, and he sent them several videos to demonstrate what he was looking for in a sample lesson. The principal called me back pretty disappointed because 2 of the 3 candidates didn't watch the videos. And he said it was apparent that they didn't watch the videos because they didn't incorporate any of that information, which is unfortunate because he kind of gave them a roadmap to demonstrate what he needed and wanted in his school, and they just didn't take the time to digest that information. So make sure if you're getting information from principals, or if you can get information offline or from your local staff, that you're digesting it and really incorporating it into what you're going to be doing in the interviews or the sample lessons. And so that kind of digesting information, doing that research you need to do to gather all of that information. The next thing is making sure that you proofread anything that you send to schools. Even if you're sending a quick thank you note or just a quick follow-up email or something short to say you will attend an interview, read it twice. Make sure that your grammar is correct. Make sure that you're expressing yourself as clearly as you can. All of those interactions are really important. You also want to make sure that you're addressing it to the right person. I know that has happened before, and a principal said that she really liked the candidate, but they referred to her as a different principal in the email, and so it was immediately showing that that person wasn't detail-oriented, and so they didn't hire him. The last thing is make sure you practice. Tonight's going to help you get a start with that. Nina and I are going to be practicing questions to demonstrate what strong answers for a lot of questions look like, what good answers look like, and then also what we call non-examples, things we don't want to do in an interview. But the only way that you're going to be able to solidify this for yourself is by practicing it. So practice in front of a mirror, practice with a friend or family member. If you think, I'm too busy, I don't have time to sit in front of the mirror and talk to myself, then I recommend that when you're driving somewhere the next time, you're in the car for 5 to 15 minutes. That's 5 to 15 minutes of practice that you can get in. Just turn the music off, don't listen to a podcast, just enjoy the sound of your own voice so you can practice some of the common questions that you'll see in the interview. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. I'm going to see, Nina, do you have anything to add before we move on?
Nope, that all sounded good.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's move into, I think, the best part of the session, which is the mock interview with Nina. So, ready, Nina?
Yes.
Okay. I am going to play the role of a principal, and Nina is playing the role of different fellows. She's going to be a rock star fellow. She might be a struggling fellow. You can kind of start trying to evaluate that for yourself to see maybe where she might be falling on that spectrum. After each question, I'm going to give her feedback, and then in some cases will ask her to try again to get it right or make it better. Okay, so Nina, thank you for joining me today. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Oh, I don't know. I'm from Maryland. I went to school in Tennessee. I just moved here a couple weeks ago. Yeah, that's me.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you, Nina. Feedback for that question, and for everyone, that was one of our non-examples. So Nina, first of all, didn't sound like she knew what she wanted to say going in. And she kind of, about me. This whole session, we're talking about me, right? She sounded almost surprised that it was going to be about her. But this question especially, that can be a starting point for kind of drafting what you might say in an interview. And so, Nina, can we give you another chance to do that again?
Sure.
Okay. And Nina, tell me about yourself.
Well, I'm enthusiastic and energetic. I have over 6 years of experience professionally working full-time in the nonprofit sector. In my free time, I like to read about American history and politics. Let's see, I moved to Nashville a short while ago, and I've already become really into the community here, and I'm even more excited to become a bigger part of this community as a teacher.
That's wonderful. So I just want to name some things that you did really well there in that second example. First of all, you started with really positive characteristics about yourself, and not only did you say that you were really, energetic, but I could see that. Like you really convey that in the way that you're saying your answer. I love that you told me about your previous experience, because that's going to give me as an interviewer a place to go from there. I could say then, oh, tell me more about your nonprofit work. Or since you love living in Nashville, oh, well, what parts of the community have you gotten to see yet? It creates more of a conversation with the interviewer, and it also has provided some really strong information to sort of make your case as a candidate. All right, so we're going to move on to the next question. And Nina, why do you want to be a teacher?
Yeah, I've just always wanted to work with kids. Ever since I was really little, I've just really enjoyed working with kids. So that's why I want to be a teacher.
Okay, good. Thank you, Nina. So this is a good answer. I think it's great that you want to work with kids, but let's talk about ways that we can make it even stronger. And I mentioned earlier that you really want to make sure that you're conveying that you are bringing a lot of great things to the table, and that you are awesome, essentially. And that's where the confidence comes in. You got to walk that line between confidence and boastful. But even a question like this, think about ways that you could turn that into making it a little bit about how you are going to be an effective teacher, and how you being a teacher is going to maybe make a bigger difference in this community that you are now living in. So Nina, why do you want to be a teacher?
Yeah, so before I joined Teach NOLA, I was working for Habitat in New Orleans, and when we were building our houses, we started talking with a lot of the kids who lived in the neighborhood as they were coming home from school. And I just loved hearing the way they were talking about what they were doing in school, talking about their amazing teachers. I could just really tell that there were amazing things happening in New Orleans schools, and I just knew that I wanted to be a part of that. Like, I know that I want to be that amazing teacher for the kids that I got to talk to through my work with Habitat. So that's why I decided to join this program and hope to become a teacher.
Awesome. Okay, so you essentially said the same thing. I want to work with kids. But what you did was added some great information about previous experience. So you showed a time that you'd work with students, and you connected that to the work that you wanted to do in the classroom. And for me as the principal, it seems very clear that when you start working in the school, your end game is going to be making sure that your kids are getting to where they want to be, and you want to help those kids any way you can. And that's really exciting for me as the principal. All right, next question. This is a long one, so I can repeat it if you need me to.
Sorry, Kelsey, I just want to break in here 1 second as a reminder to everybody. There are ask questions for Kelsey and Nina, and I also want to say you should see a panel to your right, so you can ask questions. I also want to say try and offer your own feedback. Try even before Kelsey gives you a clue. Try and add your feedback to the column. We'd love to hear how you're hearing Nina's responses as well. So go ahead, Kelsey.
Thank you, Haley. Next question. Students in our school often come from difficult situations. We find that our students face a lot of challenges in and out of school. Do you think it's fair to expect the same results from students of disadvantaged backgrounds as we do from students of privileged backgrounds?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's why I'm here. I believe that every student deserves an excellent education and has the potential to achieve that excellence, and it doesn't matter what their zip code is. So I know as a teacher I have that power and that to support all of my students as they achieve their potential.
Wonderful. That was a rock star answer, Nina. I think that is kind of right on point with the mission of TNTP and all of our Nashville, our Teaching Fellow sites, is that absolutely every student can achieve, and it's kind of up to us to help them reach that. Wonderful. So the next question, how will you measure your success as a teacher?
I'll feel successful if my students seem happy, if they're doing well on their tests, if they seem prepared for the state exams. I think that's how I'll know that I'm being successful.
Okay, great. So I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to pause for a moment, let you guys think, everyone who's watching, think about things that maybe she could have said to make that stronger, and then I will tell you what we recommend. All right, awesome. So when you answer this question, there are kind of two
It looks like Kelsey froze for a moment. We'll just pause for a moment for Kelsey to come back.
While Kelsey is frozen, I do want to remind y'all that this video will actually be available on our Google Plus page. So I know there have been some requests for a PDF transcript. While we will not be providing that, you will be able to go through and watch this recording as many times as you please once it's complete.
We also have a pretty extensive hiring guide that was embedded in the first email that you received. I'm going to copy and paste it into the comment box of the Google Hangout. You can also reach out to me at haley.downs@tntp.org or the info@tntpteachingfellows.org, and we'll send you that PDF. That was adapted from the Nashville Teaching Fellows materials. Looks like Kelsey dropped off.
So while we're working through getting Kelsey back on, I can go ahead and tell you how I would change that answer to make it a little bit more conducive to what a principal wants to hear. So to make it more aligned with what they're kind of hoping to hear. So the question was, how will you measure success in your classroom? And I have an answer that gives really specific answers. Oh, Kelsey, you're back. Go ahead. I was just kind of ad-libbing what you were going to say.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. I'm not sure I broke up, but I'll start over with the feedback to that question. So there are two things you want to think about when you think about your success as a teacher. One are quantitative examples of your success, and that's something that Nina kind of mentioned was standardized tests. And that's sort of a long-term view of how you can measure your success in the way you see growth in your students. But you can also look very short-term and at the quantitative data that shows you in even a given lesson, 1 hour, if you're teaching exponents and your objective is that they learn to add exponents. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. That if your objective is that the students add exponents, that by the end of the lesson you know exactly which kiddos in that class can do that and which cannot, and that's going to inform what you teach the next day, right? And so you can do those sort of short-term checks for how students are doing, and two ways to do that are through checks for understanding and exit tickets. There are other ways you can do that in the classroom, and you'll learn a lot of that this summer at your training. But those are the kind of long-term and short-term ways you can check the quantitative success of your students. But we also value the qualitative success. So there are several ways you can see that in your students. If the students are engaged in your class, if they're showing joy for being in your class, if you're enjoying being in your class, if your students love reading, all of those variables are ways that you can see that students are successful in your classroom. So we're not going to do that one again because I want to save some time, get to more questions. But number 4, what challenges do you anticipate facing as a new teacher in our school?
Yeah, really quick before I answer that one, I do want to shout out some of the folks giving the suggestions on the side. Those are great suggestions. The ones about kids feeling successful, you can talk about, I will feel successful if my students feel successful, if they know that they're getting better in their reading, if they know they're getting better in their math. You can also talk, I noticed that Grifflin said tracking to specific goals. I hope I pronounced your name correct, Grifflin, but that's a great point. Individual students going to their goals. You can mention other goals beyond the state exam, whether it's within a specific lesson, kind of towards what Kelsey said. So I do want to acknowledge that y'all are giving great suggestions. It sounds like you guys are definitely on the right track to think about these answers. Yes. snapping you out. And so I'll get back into my interviewing character to answer the challenges I as a first-year teacher. So, you know, I just think it'll be hard because everything will be new. Starting a new thing always has its challenges, so I know that I'll be facing some of those. Like, I haven't ever taught in a classroom, so everything will be new to me. So I think a lot of the challenges will just stem from everything being new.
Great. So in that question, it sounds like you were staying asset-based and you were kind of thinking in a growth mindset. So one way that you could make that even stronger, Nina, is if you add an example of when you've overcome a challenge in the past. And essentially you want to convey that when you face a challenge in the school, which, as you know, since you were a teacher, you absolutely face challenges even daily. You want to make sure that you convey to the principal that you're prepared to overcome them, that you're going to do the research needed, reach out to people, kind of do what you need to do to find the best course of action so you can overcome that challenge. And that's going to instill confidence in the principal that you're ready to face that. Okay, we're not going to do that one again. We're going to move on to another question again, so I'm trying to move more quickly so we get through more. This is what I call a situational question. In principle, there are a million ways to ask these situational questions, but essentially the principal is trying to find out what you would do in a given situation. And so, Nina, a student is doing poorly in class. She has fixed several assignments, and she rarely turns in her homework. What would you do?
Yeah, I think I would just sit down with the student, let those are, see why, you know, really get to the cause of why she might not be turning in those assignments. It's kind of harder to.
Great. Okay, so it sounds like still principal. You talk to her, and the student tells you that she thinks you're the worst teacher ever. What would you do?
Yeah, so I think I would thank her for that feedback and ask her what I can do to improve. You know, students are kind of our consumers, right? They're the ones who are sitting in our classrooms learning from us, and I want to make sure that I'm meeting her where she is. So I would say thank you for that feedback. What can I do to make it better for you? And then acknowledge when I'm incorporating her feedback. So if she is so annoyed that I end class a minute after the bell every day, which is super annoying, I would acknowledge, yeah, that I will stop that. And then once we're ending on time, I'll say, you know, this is because you gave me that valuable feedback. This is what I'm doing.
Okay. But so you try that, and that doesn't work either. What would you do then?
Yeah, I think that's when I would talk to the other teachers that have her as a student, kind of see what they've seen that's working. Not just, you know, maybe have her as a student, but talk to leadership that's interacted with her, talk to her teachers from last year, see what they've done that's really worked with that student.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for playing along with the what then. And when I interviewed to teach several years ago, I got this question, and they literally just kept saying, okay, well, what then? Okay, what then? Okay, what then? And it sounds a little tough, and it can be if you've never had a tough interviewer. It can feel really almost like you're on the defensive. But the principal in these kinds of situational questions, they're essentially trying to find out if you can keep your calm and cool under a little bit of pressure, and also find out kind of what your thinking is like when you do start to hit up against a wall. So, Nina, I appreciate that you kept offering some ideas on what you would do next, but I also like how you kind of referenced the support that you have around you, the teachers in your school, the administration. You also have the teaching fellows. There are a lot of places that you can reach out to get more support to find out what a good next step is. And of course, in the moment with a student, you might not be able to solve it right then, but you can just kind of say to the student, you know, it sounds like you're upset right now. Let's go to lunch or do whatever we need to do next and talk about this later. And in between then and talking about it later, you can reach out to those people and learn more. I know this is a question that Nina and I had talked about as something that comes up in interviews, and you're already nervous when you go into an interview, and so it can really throw you off guard. But Nina, do you have any other thoughts on good ways to approach these kinds of tough questions?
No, I think you said it. Those are all great points.
Okay, fantastic. So now we're going to move into some other questions. The first one, Nina doesn't know which one I'm going to do first. So this will be a surprise for her. The first one is, Nina, tell me about a time that you received critical feedback.
Yeah, I was working on a group project in college. It was for a business class, and we actually went through the practice of giving other team members feedback at the end of our group project, which was kind of new to me as an undergraduate. And I got a lot of critical feedback that I wasn't expecting. One of which that really stuck out to me was that I said sorry too much. So one of my teammates thought it was super weird that I started all of my sentences, sorry, but I have an idea. And so that was a really interesting learning moment to me, that it really kind of devalued what I was about to say and made it seem less compelling. And so that was, I really, really valued that feedback, and it's something that, now 10 years later, I still think about every time I go into a professional setting. So it was really helpful to hear that kind of feedback.
Great. Okay, I think that's a really strong answer. You are giving, you kind of made a general statement, and then you gave an example of a specific time, and not only did you tell us kind of what you got feedback for and how it changed, but you also stressed that it still affects you now. And principals want to know that, especially as a new teacher, that you're going to be open to receiving feedback, and that not only are you going to listen to it and you're going to hear it, but you'll actually digest it, apply it, and then turn that around and show it in your classroom. And you did a great job, Nina, conveying that. As a principal, I would feel confident that you're ready to do that with any feedback I'll give you on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. Thank you. So the next question, what components are important in designing a lesson?
Yeah, so I don't know the exact answer to that quite yet, because I'm only midway through Teach Like a Champion. I know that it's important to start with a really great hook and to have an objective that you're going through, that you're aiming towards, but I'm actually still in the midst of my training. I'm still in the midst of Teach Like a Champion. I know that I have tons of experts around me who tell me what those important components are, and I'm ready and eager to learn about everything they have to tell me.
Brilliant. Okay, that's like the best I don't know I've ever heard. So you were honest. You were like, I don't know that yet. But you also kind of name dropped all of those things that you have going for you to help you strengthen over the course of the summer, so that when you do start in the fall, you will know that and you'll be bringing that into the classroom with you. So Teach Like a Champion is a great resource, and I like that you sort of threw in a few things that you had read about. The hook is really important, and you also referenced all that support that you have around you. So well done. I also like that you kind of ended with, I'm ready to listen to whatever you have to tell me, because that puts the principal in a good spot to say, like, oh, well, I can tell you, here's what I think, and can start that conversation with them, and you can immediately start learning and receiving that feedback. Nicely done. Next question. Our school values collaboration and learning from each other. What would we be able to learn from you?
I'm sorry, you cut out. Can you answer that question?
Sure.
And no, when you're on phone interviews, that is likely to happen. So if the principal cuts out or you can't really hear them on your cell phone, it's totally okay to say, I'm really sorry, the connection is I didn't.
That's a great point. I'm glad you said that, because that does happen. Or your computer will shut off. Who knows? So the next question was, our school values collaboration and learning from each other. What could we learn from you?
Yeah, I think I bring a unique perspective to our school because, or to this, I would bring a unique perspective to the school because I'm actually from this neighborhood. And so I have a lot of history here. I know that there's a lot of folks who are from this town or might be from this state, but it's actually the neighborhood that I grew up in. I went to the school 3 blocks over, and so I think having that context and that history will really make me, I hope, a resource for other folks in the school.
Wonderful. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. That's those are some great sort of insights into you as a person and what you'll be bringing to the school. Some other good things to mention there are, you're a good team player because working at school, you're constantly working on a team of teachers to help these students and help make sure the school is running. So I kind of want to throw this question out to the people that are watching. What are some things that you feel like you will be bringing to the school? And if you're not sure how you can answer this question, think about a previous experience when you were working in a team of maybe 4 or 5 people, and think about the role that you played on that team. So Nina did a good job connecting to the specific community that the school is in, but you can also just think generally about what you're bringing to the table. Anyone want to offer insights? And I'm not sure, I don't think I can see all of what they're posting, Nina, so if you want to share out anything.
It doesn't look like anyone has answered this question yet.
Okay.
They're kind of not in answered order because when people +1, it goes up the list.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But there are some really amazing questions that have been posted, so maybe we can answer some of those while we wait for some.
Okay, sure, let's do that.
So one of the questions that I think is really great, or Haley, I'm sorry, have you been going through them?
No, I'd start, there's one at the top that has a +6, which indicates a lot of folks are interested. I've started emailing principals applying for open positions on the DCTF vacancy list, but I have not heard back from any of them. I know they might be busy, but I would really like to follow up. Would it be pushy if I followed up the week after? So allowing 1 week before follow-up after sending a resume.
Great question. I normally say a week to 2 weeks is a good kind of rule of thumb there. And especially if you've actually gone in for an interview or done a sample lesson, then a week is usually best. It is good to keep in mind that principals, like you said, are very busy, especially it's the end of the year. They're wrapping things up. I know Tennessee just finished our state testing, and it was like principals went dark for a few days, and then they came right back after testing was over. So it's a good thing to consider what else might be going on for them. But yeah, Nina, do you have any other thoughts?
No, I think that sounds great. I do want to say now we have gotten some really great answers to things that people would bring. So to your first question, so Ashley will bring her competitive nature, always ready to take on new challenges. Anthony is a recent transplant to where he'll be teaching, so he'll be bringing in an outside flavor filled with an understanding of cultural diversity. Let's see. Angie is got +1, so I can't run away from you.
Oh, Laura has a good one.
Go ahead and read it.
They're all jumbling. Laura says, I am a planner and very organized. I've also done fundraising in many of my schools, which would be something fun to work on at this school.
A principal would love to hear that. Those are great. So, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, you are all bringing great things to the table. I want to make sure you all have that kind of confidently rooted in yourselves. And thank you for sharing those things, because I like hearing all those positive things that the fellows are bringing into our positions. I think it's awesome that a lot of our fellows are coming from different backgrounds, because we definitely bring a little something different to the school. And like the one fellow said, that if you're coming from somewhere else, you're bringing that outside perspective. So great, guys. That's really exciting. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
So we're at sort of the 2/3 way mark. Do we want to, Haley, do you want to start doing more of their questions?
Sure. Another one, I have followed the guideline. This is from Jeb. I followed the guidelines for the cover letter, which DCTF provided, but I feel that because I have not gotten responses from principals, my cover letter is not effective. Is there anyone from DCTF staff that I can get feedback from my cover letter? I'll take that one, and then feel free to layer in, guys. I would reach out to DCTF staff. Kelsey is with Nashville, and Nina and I work with National TNTP Teaching Fellows. So I would reach out tomorrow to DCTF staff, to Emily in DCTF, and ask her if that is something that they can provide. in any site you're at, in terms of hiring support, that's definitely something the program manager would like to know about if you're interested in.
I would also add that I wouldn't take a week lag. I noticed you were the same from earlier. I wouldn't take a week lag as an indication that your cover letter was you're not hearing back. Again, principals are super busy, so if it's been a week or 2 weeks, it might just be a lag time in communication. I wouldn't necessarily think that it's just because of your cover letter or your application.
And I would just put in another plug for the hiring guide that we adapted from Nashville's. It's very, very extensive and very thorough. It has a lot of great information. Read that one really carefully. It'll have a lot of tips for you in terms of making your case and preparing.
Can I say one thing real quick?
Mm-hmm.
So my big role here is helping our new fellows transition through the enrollment process, and the kind of greatest advice I can give you is if you do have a question, like if you want a cover letter reviewed or you're not sure about something, please reach out to your staff. Like, I am thrilled when I get questions because that's my job and I love helping people get ready for training and being a teacher, but I'm not able to help someone unless they tell me they need it. And so you got to kind of speak up and let them know. And then most of the time, they're able to go out of their way, if possible, to help you.
Absolutely. Isha says, I am most nervous about making all of my answers appropriate for all grade levels. I will be applying for the ESL elementary, middle, and high schools, so I wonder if there's a way that I could structure answers and responses to fit all levels.
That's good. My first thought for that one is, sorry, Nina, go ahead.
No, it's all you.
So my thought on that one is that it would be really hard to address all age levels for every question. So you can take kind of two approaches. You can, in one question, answer it and kind of cater it toward the elementary school level, and another question, cater it to the middle school level, to demonstrate that you're thinking sort of broadly about what you will be doing. And you can even say that. If they ask you about, like the question I asked about what's the most important part of designing a lesson, you can say, well, I know that across my grade levels, it might vary given the topic and what we're studying and what support they need, but then give an example on a specific one so they can see your kind of deeper level thinking on it. But I think it's okay to sort of kind of name that is a struggle for you, because it's just going to demonstrate to the principal that you're already critically thinking about it.
Gabriella asked, do you have any insight on an interview question from general education positions?
You broke out on that one, so I didn't hear it. Nina, do you want to answer it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Haley, can you repeat it?
Do you have any insight on any SPED-specific interview questions, how they may differ from general education positions?
That's a good question. Nina, do you want to take that one?
Oh, sure. So I would just say anticipating special education questions won't be significantly different within than general education questions or questions for different teaching positions. What I will say is there'll probably be a couple more questions about teamwork, because special educators do work so collaboratively with the rest with their students, teachers, in other contexts. So I would be prepared for a couple more questions about teamwork and communication, because that will be a large part of your position. And what I will say, kind of piggybacking on what Kelsey was talking about earlier, is principals know that you're going to be a first-year teacher. They're not going to ask you a ton of content-specific questions, because they're aware that you're coming in and that you're receiving training. So, with special education, the kind of what Kelsey was talking about, the grand I don't know question is really okay, because you're going to be learning, how to write an IEP, what accommodations look like for your students and your caseload. So that's really okay to make that big I don't know, as she said. The one thing I would just be prepared to talk about is your ability to collaborate as a special educator.
I'm sorry if I murder your name. Valerie Chase asks, how would each of you answer the question, why teaching, why now?
Is that for us, or do you think that's for...
That's for you guys.
Oh.
I think.
Well, because Nina kind of answered that one in the why do you want to be a teacher?
And I will say that was my honest answer. That's why I became a teacher. I taught through our programs, and it was because of my previous position in which I had gotten to interact with students that I really decided I wanted to be a teacher. So that was my genuine and authentic answer to why teaching. And why now isn't as
I would,
but yeah.
I would just say I think there's tremendous power in stories, and every one of you has a story of why you want to teach, and there's a moment that every one of you decided you wanted to teach, and it probably is an emotional moment for you. For many, it's volunteering, it's tutoring. There was a moment, and I would say don't hesitate to tell the principal that story, because storytelling is very powerful because it's how we connect with each other, and I think that's a moment, an opportunity when you can really connect with the principal powerfully around a shared desire to teach kids, make lives better for kids. I am scrolling. Oh, we already asked that. Sorry, guys.
I think
go ahead.
I see one at the very top that has 9 pluses on it. And it is, but when should we begin worrying if we are not receiving interviews? I'm nervous about being selected because there are so many people looking for jobs, and I do not have any classroom teaching experience. And so to answer that question, now it has 10 likes. I tell my own fellows I believe in the 3 Ps for interviewing, and that is your presence, your preparation, and oh wait, no, sorry, I'm messing up. I'm telling my Ps from earlier. Be proactive, prepare, and the last one is not panic. It is be patient, because it does take time, and I know in the past years I've heard from former fellows that it has been even late July or early August until they got their position. And that does happen, so there's no reason to panic, but that's a better reason to remain patient and stay proactive. The reason that you see that happening is because a lot of schools may not know what available or vacancies they have until that time. They might think they have a teacher returning the next year, and they find out late in the summer that they don't, and that vacancy becomes available. That's an amazing moment for our fellows to kind of swoop in to take that position, because we are flexible, we are adaptable. You might be thinking you're going to teach 7th grade English, but then at the last moment 5th grade math becomes available. Our fellows are ready to do that. So yes, stay proactive, keep preparing, and then just be patient.
What is the time frame of expectancy to hear back from a principal after an interview? I've had teachers tell me that the usual response time is within a week. However, others have said it could take up to a month. That does vary. So I would agree. It can take a week and it can take up to a month. For example, like I said earlier, when we were doing state testing, principals went dark, and there were some people that had interviewed before and were starting to panic a little because they thought it didn't go well. Lo and behold, testing's over, and they were offered the job. So you do want to stay patient. I would say you can follow up once, 1 or 2 weeks after, and then wait another maybe 2 weeks to follow up again. It's also good when you do follow up. I was advising some of my fellows today. We started our training today, and they were asking if they could follow up, and I said, absolutely, but when you follow up, say something about what you're doing with us today. Like, today I was at training, and we were talking about a growth mindset. I am so excited to start applying all this knowledge in the schools. I wanted to check in, because I know we had interviewed several weeks ago, to find out more about that open position, right? So you can kind of pull in what you're doing, show them how engaged you are. That's a stronger follow-up email than just saying, like, hey, do you still have that job open, or did I get that job? And so you can demonstrate some of that learning. Do you want to add anything, guys?
I love that. I think that's a great strategy.
Wonderful.
I'd love to answer the question that's on the one about the demo lesson. I can't, it just disappeared from my my question, but, or my list, but someone had a question about doing a demo lesson over the summer, which principals will often request a sample lesson as part of your interview process. And the good news is that's what PSD is for. A lot of times principals will come in and actually observe you during PSD, and that's something your site staff will likely be actively pursuing. I know, there might be open house days for principals to come and, observe fellows, and they'll get a list. Say they need a 12th grade math teacher, they'll get all of the people who are eligible for 12th grade math certification, and they'll be able to go through and observe all of them. So do not fear having to do a sample lesson over the summer is not a problem. In fact, it's ready-made for you because you are giving lessons every day as part of PSD.
The interviewing process is also a time to learn about the school's structure and culture. Should you accept a job offer from a school, even if you don't feel from the interview it is the best fit for you?
Oh, that is such a good question. So that is definitely something that you need to balance for yourself. I compare it sometimes to looking for the right college. If you go to a college campus and you realize it's not going to be a good fit for you, that if you spend the year there, even 4 years there, you're not going to be happy, that's important to consider. If you feel like you really won't be happy in that school, then that might be a reason that you would not want to take that position. But you would make that decision knowing that there's a risk there might not be another position offered to you. So again, you got to balance it. The other thing I hear people say kind of connected to that is, like, what if the school I love offers me a job but it's not in the subject I want to teach? Like, another thing you have to balance, is it worth going to the place that feels right, even if you're not teaching what you really love? And in those cases, I normally say yes, that it is, it's good to take an opportunity for this year that you think will be a good fit, if it's the subject or even if it's the culture. And then after this year, you can always choose to move somewhere else or do something different if you want. But that's sort of the general advice I give, is like to weigh those things, knowing that it is a risk. But feel free to layer in, guys.
Yeah, I would also say to just keep a really open mind. I know that when I was going through the job search process for my teaching position, and I know Kelsey can probably speak to this too, I had a lot of perceptions about what different charter networks look like, what its district school might be like, and I got an interview at a school that I had a lot of perceptions about, and when I got there, I felt like, oh wow, this is, having spent a day there, like this is the school I want to be at, which 24 hours before, if you had asked me, I would have said I do not want to teach there. And the same goes for subject areas. Personally, I'm certified to teach elementary school, so I was like, I only want to teach upper elementary, and the position I was offered was in kindergarten, and I cannot imagine teaching upper elementary now. I loved it. So I would encourage you to challenge your perceptions of what you think you want, or what you think you've got your heart set on, and really consider the opportunities that arise, and be open to that possibility that you might be able to adapt to those opportunities and make them, kind of the best experience there is.
And one more thing, if you do encounter that that kind of conundrum, because it is a hard question to answer, make sure you follow up with your local site staff and ask them, because they're going to have more context for the particular schools or opportunities, and they can help guide you through that decision as well.
Great. This is a question from Ashley, and a lot of folks are interested in hearing what you have to say. Do you all think that it is a good idea to acknowledge possible plans after teaching, and how teaching fits into a greater plan?
Nina, I'm going to let you answer this, since you have exciting plans after your teaching.
So I would say I wouldn't bring it up unless someone asks about your 5-year plan or your long-term plan. If there's a question and you're inserting what you want to do that's not teaching, without being asked about it, it could seem a little bit flighty or not as committed as you want to seem. But if a principal asks, like, where do you see yourself in 10 years, tell them. By all means, tell them exactly what you want to be doing in 10 years. Makes it seem like you have a plan. But what I would say is you also want to be open to the possibility, I haven't taught yet. Right now my plan is to teach for 5 years and then move on to becoming, a coordinator of special education. But you know, leave it open to say, I don't know, I haven't been a special educator yet, so I might want to do that for 10 years total. So I think, and I just violated one of Kelsey's rule by rambling through that answer. But I think that's kind of where I would go with this. Do y'all have anything else to say to that?
Actually, I'll say that, I mean, you know, this is a job interview, so imagine going into a job interview that isn't teaching and saying, you know, and talking about the job you want to have after this job. I mean, you really are selling your employer on your excitement about being there. I mean, principals are interested in career teachers as well, so I think as much as, you know, if as much as you want to acknowledge, if you're asked directly, your lifetime plans, I think you're also setting up for the principal that your intention is to be there, and to entrench yourself into the community, become a valuable part of the community, and you're really, you're doing you're selling, and if you're selling the principal on your desire to really become a part of the community, it's going to come off, I think, a lot better.
So Haley, I saw that we have just a few minutes left. I want to dive in with one thing that hasn't come up yet, and this is when often in interviews, principals will give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have, and when that happens, make sure you have 3 to 5 questions is what I recommend, that beforehand in your preparation that we've already talked about, you have thought of your 3 to 5 questions. Some of them may be answered throughout the interview, and then you should ask at least 2. You don't want to ask questions like, what time does school start? Or what's the mission of the school? Those are all things that you should have already learned on the website. Instead, you could say, I was reading your website and I saw that your mission is for 100% of your students to go to college. How does your 5th grade implement that on a day-to-day basis? Right? So that's going to get the principal talking more about their school and explaining more about the culture and actually how things get done to achieve these huge missions and visions that they have on the website. There are a lot of different questions you can ask that demonstrate that you've done your research. I love referencing like, oh, I was on your website learning about your school, because it shows the principal, I do my homework. I mean, you don't want to say that explicitly, but that's as close as you could get to being explicit. I do my homework. I am prepared. And you can also ask questions. Another great question I like to recommend is, can you tell me more about the opportunities to get feedback from administration or teacher leaders in the school? Would anyone be observing my class? How will I be evaluated? And that'll start a conversation with the principal about ways that you'll be able to grow. Again, it's going to demonstrate that you're open to feedback, you're open to learning and growing, that you're a team player, and it also is going to give you a chance, since an interview should be a little bit of a two-way street, it's going to give you a chance to make sure that that principal, who will essentially be your manager, is going to be a good fit for you. So those are just some of the ones that are good. Shall I go ahead and close, or do we have a few more minutes, Haley?
I think we can take a few more minutes. We still have folks on the line. We shouldn't go for maybe another 3 minutes. I have also posted the hiring guide in the showcase to the right, so hopefully you'll be able to see it.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, the last thing I just wanted to say is I talked to a lot of the principals, and they know that our fellows are teachers in the raw. And so this is going back to the confidence thing that I was talking about earlier. Like, you are a teacher in the raw, but you are bringing your previous experiences, your energy, your passion, your enthusiasm and excitement for this new opportunity. Just make sure that's shining through in the way that you're answering questions in the interviews, or the way that you deliver a sample lesson, because that's going to be the strongest kind of foot you can lead on, and so you can make sure that comes across in your interviews. But yeah, that's kind of all I had.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Kelsey and Nina. You guys were excellent. We're all lucky to have heard from you. And good luck to everybody out there. You're going to do great. Somebody asked about there being more fellows than jobs, and I'll tell you that last year all of our sites had 100% higher rate. So there are jobs out there for you. Be patient. What were your 3 Ps? Patient, proactive?
Proactive, preparation, and patient.
Yeah.
Not panic.
No panic. And do reach out to site staff with your questions and for feedback. We're all here to support you. And good luck. Good night.